Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Mitch Kowalski. Mitch is a Senior Commercial Counsel at the Greater Toronto Airports Authority, and prior to this, he was a General Counsel. Mitch was a partner at Baker and McKenzie, now Baker McKenzie, a partner at Aylesworth LLP, now Dickinson's Wright LLP, and a real estate solicitor at the City of Toronto. He has a wealth of experience as a director, member of board of directors, real estate counsel, commercial solicitor, and in legal operations. Mitch has taught at the University of Calgary as the Gowling WLG Visiting Professor in Legal Operations and Innovation. He is also the author of critically acclaimed books, The Great Legal Reformation, Notes from the Field, and Avoiding Extinction, Reimagining Legal Services for the 21st Century. Mitch is passionate about delivering legal services and has been named as a Fast Case 50 Global Legal Innovator. So, a very big warm welcome, Mitch.
Rob, great to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Before we dive into all your amazing projects, experiences today, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking pod, on the scale of 1 to 10. 10 being very real. What would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law, if you've seen it?
1. I've seen bits and parts of it, but it's a 1. So here's my take on Suits, or tangentially into what we'll be discussing today anyways. Is one of the things I do is teach to students, law students. And there are a large number of students who go to law school because they've watched Suits and they thought it was really cool and they're going to be a super duper lawyer and they're going to come up with all these things and life is going to be great and all this stuff. And then on top of that, their parents also say, oh yeah, you should be a lawyer. If you're a lawyer, it's amazing. So, and I always say, that's not real. Guys, just it's not real. That's not what your life will be like. I wish it was like that, but it's not. So there you go.
And with that, you've justified your 1, and we'll move swiftly on. So to begin with, Mitch, would you mind telling our listeners a bit about your background and career journey?
Sure. I have an extremely eclectic career. Let's put it that way. I started out at a large firm. I worked at Baker McKenzie for 10 years, became a local partner there, then shifted gears to another firm, Dickinson Wright. And Dickinson Wright is a large regional firm, and they had an office at Toronto. And then I decided to go in-house. So I was at City of Toronto for a while as an in-house lawyer. All of this is real estate related. So I'm a real estate guy. I like property. I like to touch things and see it and watch things being built and all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff really gets me excited, much more excited than general corporate work or whatever. So that was my journey there. And then I said, hey, let's do something completely different and take a business role with First Canadian Title, which is a title insurance company, which is quite big in North America. It's, people somewhat use it in the UK. In Europe, Australia, but it's really kind of a North American thing so far. And then I said, gosh, I'm not really happy with that either. So let's do some private practice. So run my own shop for a while. And as part of that, I was also running a writer center. So I started Toronto Writer Center, which was a small office sharing kind of place for writers. Think WeWork before WeWork existed. So, and so we just did it for writers. And then I said, let's change gears again, go in-house at Allian Property Developments, was a property developer. And then now I'm at the GTA, which is the Toronto Pearson Airport. So, the equivalent of Heathrow for people in the UK. So I've done like all kinds of different things. And I think that gives me a really different perspective on legal practice. Because if you only stay in one place for a long time, then you become full of tunnel vision and you don't see how other people are doing things. You don't get new ideas. You're not open to new ideas because this is the way your firm does things and we've been successful. So why change? And along that journey is when I wrote my books and stuff. So there, there you go. Like, it's all over the place. It's not a linear path at all.
But that's what I love. There's no such thing as like one traditional route. You've been in all these different environments. You've got a whole lot of wisdom that you can pass on and share with people. But I do want to stick with private practice just for a couple of questions, because there's so much wisdom we're trying to unpack. Because you were a partner in a well-renowned international law firm, Baker and McKenzie, formerly now obviously Baker McKenzie. What type of work were you involved there, and what are some of your sort of reflections from your time there?
Right. It was all project finance work and, project development and acquisitions and leasing and everything. So it was a general commercial property practice. And it's so, yeah, then people say, well, why would you leave Baker McKenzie, right? And this is not a let's pile on Baker McKenzie kind of story, but it's I was just unhappy there. I was unhappy with the way I was told to practice, right? Like, this is the way you do things. I was unhappy with the billing requirements and how things were billed and so on and so forth. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's just this. And you have to understand, Baker McKenzie has loads of offices, and every office is a very different ecosystem. Right. So the experience in one office is not going to be necessarily the experience in another office. So with all those kind of caveats around, I was really unhappy with the way the firm was run. Fair enough. That's my thing. I go to another firm and I start to realize, no, that's how all firms are run. It's not specific to, this particular office. It's like, wow, you guys really, and none of this resonated with me. And that's a problem. If you're not going to row in the same direction, then you should get out of the boat and do something completely different. And it's not that I didn't enjoy practicing law, because I did enjoy doing things. I enjoyed the clients and so on. It was just the structure around which I was required to do things that didn't work for me. So that started my journey. And that also was the genesis for the books. It was a deep-rooted unhappiness with, there's something wrong with this profession. It's really bugging me. So why don't I really think about it and put something together?
Exactly. And that's what I love about that. It's very easy to complain and find problems, isn't there? But actually to go and get obsessed with trying to find solutions, talk about it, generate conversations, mastermind, collaborate, all of that good stuff. I'm all for it. But again, let's go through your journey, because you were obviously a partner, obviously in Aylesworth LLP as well. And so how did that position? Yeah, exactly. And I think for people trying to get a sort of understanding and getting into your mind and your career journey, how did that role differ from your position as a real estate solicitor at City of Toronto?
There is a massive difference between private practice and in-house practice. And it is, for a lot of people, it's a hard adjustment to make, because you become more interested in risk assessment as opposed to perfection, right? In private practice, it's all about making sure everything is absolutely perfect. So, to CYA, right? And to make sure that you don't get sued and, blah, blah, blah. There is no training around, the chances of this clause ever being triggered. And what I've seen in my career is nobody's ever sued on this clause. It ain't that big a deal. Let's move the transaction along. Versus in-house, where you make those calls all the time. Say, you know what? This is good enough for us, because we need to get things done and we need to move along. And I can make those kind of risk-based decisions that you don't make in private practice, because you're working as a team with the business people to get things done. You don't want to be seen as the person who's blocking the transaction, who's the department of no, who's just saying, guys, nope, I'm legal. Legal says no, because then your business team stop coming to you. They don't see you as a partner. They don't see you as part of a team. And they're like, oh my God, do we really have to go to legal on this? Because A, they're going to say no, or B, they're not going to give me a different way to do this, or C, it's going to take forever. So it's a completely different mindset. And you're not obsessed with billable hours either, because billable hours are pretty much in a lot of in-house environments, particularly where I'm now at GTA, like there is no hours requirement. It's just like, get the work done. That's what we care. That's where we measure on results. It's a results-driven approach as opposed to an input-driven approach. And so it just allows you to do things completely differently. And, for some people, that's a hard thing to do, because if you've grown up in a big firm environment where perfection is driven into your brain, you just go, but. So
I love that. And you come from it from a place of everything you're sharing is all about working towards solutions, collaborating, not being that department of no, like you say, what a lot of people seem to have a misconception regarding legal teams and in-house teams. So you're always trying to work together to kind of get to an end goal, which I like, which probably comes to my next question quite nicely, which is all about sort of operations and innovation, because you've also advised on legal operations and innovation. But for some of our listeners who may be less familiar, how would you explain what legal operations and innovation is, particularly in a legal context?
Right. So legal operations and innovation is the actual business of law, how you get things done. What are the processes? What are the workflows? And how do you optimize those? So innovation is not creating something new, although it could be, but in most cases, it is tweaking existing things and making them better, create a better result for the client, a better client experience for the client. All these sorts of things are what you're looking at and say, what do we do now? Let's map out how we do it, when we do it, who does it, and when each people, jump in and out of this transaction and say, is that the best way to do this? Can we do this a different way? What if we move the pieces around in a different fashion, in a different order, with different people? How does the result change? How does the pricing change? How does the client experience change? And that's what you look at when you're in those kinds of roles. And it's a tough role in law firms, because lawyers tend to be very stubborn, and lawyers look at the future through a rearview mirror, right? This is what we've always done. Please don't tell me that I'm doing this matter wrong. Don't tell me, because I've been I make a lot of money, so obviously I'm doing it right. So that sort of feedback loop with the lawyers prevents them from seeing the possible. They're really good at pointing out the risk. They're not good at seeing the possible and the possible benefits that come.
I love that. And it reminds me of when we had Jack Newton, the CEO of Clio, who came on the show, who talked a lot about, we shouldn't be always saying what if, it should be what is. And like you're saying there, what is if we actually do make that change? What are these operations, or what could happen? And I just love that whole mindset. And talking of roles, I'm drilling down a bit more specifically, because you've kind of touched on this already, but you've obviously been a partner in an international law firm. You've been a sole practitioner. You've been an in-house counsel. What are some of your observations in these roles in delivering legal services? What would you say?
What I want to say is that I think quite frankly, a lot of law firms do things in a 1950s kind of way in a 21st century environment. And they've carried that along without thinking about rejigging how things are done, because we are coming closer and closer to an era where consumers of legal services, whether it's corporate clients, mom and pop shops, or individuals, are starting to look at, well, legal is just another service. I purchase lots of services, all, in different aspects of my life. Why is legal not changed? Why do I have to go to a lawyer's office? Why can't I just do this online? Why can't I purchase documentation or so? Like, why can't this be a service that is augmented by lawyers instead of a service that is driven by lawyers. And I think that's where the mindset has to shift away from this lawyer-centric model to a more holistic team approach to how legal services are delivered. What gives the best client experience? Is it really the lawyer, or is it just the lawyer in these 2 or 3 points? And how do we fill in all those gaps with other providers, paralegal professionals, with maybe some technology? How do we create a client experience instead of a lawyer experience? And that's where I think, law firms should be going. But as long as they keep making lots and lots of money, they're going to keep asking the same questions, because like, well, Mitch, but we had another blowout year.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes it takes a change so much bigger almost than one specific industry. We're seeing that with AI and everything that's coming, that I'm not going to change because it's always been done that way and we're doing super well and it's still working. But for people who can look further ahead and see models past like today, things need to change. And that probably again leads nicely onto one of the articles I'm going to quote you on. You're in recently called the Surviving the Reformation. You state, we are already seeing fallout from the early days of the Great Legal Reformation. Partners no longer have permanent tenure. Associates have little chance of becoming partners, and contract lawyers and paralegals are rapidly replacing full-time lawyers. So if this continues, what will be the impact on the traditional career trajectory within law firms?
Well, I think you'll see lawyerless growth. Okay. I think firms will start embracing growing their firms without adding more lawyers, right? At a certain point, say, do we really need more lawyers in this firm? Because lawyers are super expensive, right? Every time I look at how much newly qualifieds make in London, it blows my mind that these are people who, let's be honest, if I'm a corporate client and I'm purchasing, a huge hourly rate from someone who has, just out of law school and just finished training, the value they add to my file is virtually nothing. Okay. So you're going to see that where firms really look at their costs and say, how do I manage my costs better with the same amount of people, right? Or the same amount of lawyers. I don't want to grow by adding more lawyers. I'm going to grow in a different fashion. And whether that is by adding a ALSP element to it, we're going to outsource some things. Maybe we're going to have a captured ALSP that's going to do a certain amount of work. So we've seen some UK firms do that in Belfast or Poland or whatever, and managing their costs in that direction, investing more in technology to say, okay, so how do we have our people who didn't go to law school, who we're not paying outrageous fees or salaries to, how do we make them better? How do we skill them up and do them to do higher value work and manage things that way? I think that the difficulty is, and I was just part of a seminar or a webinar the other day in the US where all the in-house counsel were saying, that the fees, we're expecting fees to go up 10 to 15% this year. And everybody was unhappy about it. Like everybody was nobody said, oh yeah, it's totally justified. Everybody said, this is like, absurd. And inflation is like 4%. My fees go up 15%. How does that make any sense? And the comments were, we know why they're going up that much, because the firms just want to make more money. And that's just a profit grab. And at some point, although I've been saying this for years, clients are going to say no. And there's a reason why in-house departments are growing, because stuff is just getting too expensive. People can't afford £1,000 an hour, even $1,000 an hour for partners to do work. They can't afford $800 an hour, £800 an hour. So it is a bit of a slow burn, although what's saving a lot of law firms is branding. is no one ever got fired by hiring a magic circle firm to do something, right? So when, hopefully when that mind shifts a little bit, and I think it's starting to, although there are a lot of people who are willing to overpay because that's a CYA move for them internally. If something goes wrong, it's like, well, we had a magic circle firm on it, so not my fault. I hired the best.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? And I think reputation can carry through, particularly in terms of people's buying decisions and sort of the trust they put in that. But there's been a wave of new firms, particularly over here in the UK, that have come up that are modern, that are exciting. The consulting models coming ahead, and people will be able to offer these services at a far more affordable price. But equally with some of the, exactly, if not better, options out there. So I think it's real right for disruption. I am really excited about that. Today's episode is brought to you by Clio Payments, the ultimate solutions for law firms looking to streamline their billing and payments. Clio Payments, available in the UK, has updated its pricing for pay-by-bank transfers, allowing you to accept these transfers for free. Yes, that's right, 0 fees on bank transfers. And here's the cherry on top. Until May 31st, 2024, Clio is offering new customers an incredible 90 days of free card processing on card payments. With Clio Payments, which is included in Clio Managed subscriptions, you can handle all your billing, payments, and collections seamlessly right within the Clio platform. No more switching between systems, no more headaches, just pure efficiency. Record your time, generate and send bills, accept payments, and automate reminders and reconcile payments, all in one place. Even after the 90 days, you'll continue to enjoy free pay-by-bank transfers. As for card payments, they'll be charged at standard rates. Don't miss out on this incredible offer to save money and gain more time for what truly matters. Visit clio.com/UK/payments today to learn more and start simplifying your law firm billing and payments process. That's clio.com, clio.com/UK/payments. Offer ends 31st of May 2024. Terms and conditions apply. Now back to the show. And what I'm also excited about, which you've alluded to, but now we're going to talk about, is your book, because I think it's bang on the money. And this is why we got introduced by our good friend Sean Jardine. So your book, Avoiding Extinction, Reimagining Legal Services for the 21st Century, explores the possibility of what law firms could be. Emphasis on could be. So what are some of the insights you would like to share from the book?
Oh, lots. It's interesting because one of the law firms in the UK that I've worked with and have become good friends with over the years, the managing director there said, like, every time I read your book, I find something new. And I'm like, wow, that's great. That's like the best thing possible this summer, because it was really, as we've mentioned at the top of the show, was this isn't like Mitch whining about how terrible legal services. This is, okay, I'm unhappy. Here's a solution. I'm giving you guys the solution. What you do with it is up to you, but I'm telling you, this is my view of legal services world. So corporate structure, independent board of directors making decisions, taking the decision-making power of the law firms out of the partners. And I know, any partner who's listening to this is like, oh my God, like, the world is going to cave in. The reality is that law firms aren't good models for business, showing people how to run businesses. The fact that you can run your own practice doesn't mean you can run a law firm, doesn't mean you can run a business. There is that perception out there, especially if you're successful, right? But the reality is it's not a good place to groom leaders. Because you can run your practice doesn't mean you can run the firm. It's a totally different skill set. And the incentives are all wrong in current law firm structures, right? As much as law firms like to talk about, they have a holistic compensation model that rewards a whole bunch of things. Let's be brutally honest. It is, if you pound a lot of hours, you are going to continue to climb. If your hours are pretty average, but you do all kinds of professional development stuff for the firm, knowledge management, help out with, all sorts of, client development stuff, that stuff is kind of a bonus in the law firm calculation. As much as they will tell you it's not, it certainly is. And so if you reward pounding hours, then you get a certain type of person who just wants to pound hours. It also rewards gross inefficiency, because if you're better at doing your files, you make the firm less money. So you're not as valued as someone who will be much more inefficient. And quite frankly, that's what I found, because I was always a very efficient lawyer. And I was always told my hours are low. And I'm saying, yeah, but the clients love me. Everything's going well. Yeah. Just, pound more hours. And, there were partners who told me how to, gross up my hours. And so that is something that is difficult. The law firms don't reward teams. They reward individuals. And so moving to a team model of, we are going to get things done. So put your team together and we're going to work as a team. It doesn't matter if the lawyer only touched it 4 times, okay? That leads into the pricing model. The pricing is, as Sean's already talked about in a previous episode, value-based pricing, right? We're not billing by the hour. We're billing for the result. And so that creates less competition within the firm in terms of creating a different culture within the firm. So all of these things, you put them together and you invest in your knowledge management, you invest in your technology, and you invest in your people, and you build that collaborative approach to law as opposed to a very antagonistic approach to law. And also, we also trust our people in our law firm. So let me just say this, because this is a big thing with me. I don't think law firms trust their people. When you hear, the amount of law firms saying, gosh, we have to come back to the firm offices. We can't work remotely because it impacts our culture. It's is complete bunk, because you made huge profits during COVID when you're all remote. So, they conveniently ignore that. They need to have this view. I need to see you in the office. I need FaceTime, because if I don't see you, I don't trust that you're really working. That sends a really negative message. So in my law firm, it is very much, you're judged on the result. I don't care how you do it. I don't care where you do it. I don't care when you want it. If you want to work, at 2:00 in the morning, God bless you. If you want to work 9 to 5, perfect, right? You got to pick up your kids. You got to deal with your parents. You got whatever. Don't care. All I care about is, here's the work. Here's the deadline. Get it done. Boom. Send out the bill. We're happy. And so that creates a very, very different culture within the firm. There, I blabbed on.
No, I think it's all great stuff, because I was having a conversation with a friend earlier today who runs her own law firm, and she was thinking about a partner hire. And I said, the worst thing you could do if you're looking for someone who you really want to shape and mold the team and be collaborative is go and find a rainmaker. They potentially, can help, if you want to bolt on and make the money. If you want someone who's actually got that skills, the expertise, and has built people and invested in all the other things that you say that typically isn't rewarded, they may not be the best fit for your firm. So don't just look at that sort of optic, because like you said, particularly all these emerging firms, because all you end up doing is emulating what the traditional firms have done. You want those people with the mindset and the skills or the openness to try and change your approach.
I mean, what breaks my heart is when firms break apart. Okay, that's one thing. Or a small group says, you know what, I hate this bureaucracy and all this stuff at the big firm. We're going to strike out our own and we're going to be a new age firm and stuff. And as you said, all you do is recreate a miniature version of what you just came from. And that's not innovative. That's not new. That's just you deciding that you want to lower your office costs.
Yeah. It's, and sometimes it's hard for maybe people to hear this, but it's hard to hear the reality of the fact is the reality of the fact. And, it's important that you need to kind of move with the times. And talking of that, I want to ask this question. Why do you think it's significant for law firms to be investing in legal operations? What are the long-term advantages, say, in the next 5-10 years down the line?
Cost reduction and happier clients. Happier clients and happier employees, right? If you want happy clients, you better have really happy employees, right? And how do you get happy employees? You actually speak to them and say, how do you want to work? What works for you? How do we create the employee experience that is better from the firm down the street? Because if you create a better employee experience, those employees aren't going to leave you, right? They're not going to jump across the street for an extra 10K a year. They're going to say, sure, but when I go there, their culture sucks. The way they do the work sucks. I'm going to have to come into the office every day and people are going to look over my shoulder all the time. Whereas here, it's like, okay, I'm super happy. And maybe the pay is not exactly what I'm going to get there, but jumping to that is just too big a risk for me for pure money. I have to have better reasons to come into the office. And then if you have those kinds of employees, you don't get the churn that we get in a lot of, especially large firms, where it's just churn, and nobody thinks of the cost of churn, right? There have been lots and lots of articles and studies on the cost of churning through associates, the cost of hiring, training, and then having to do it all again is huge. It's multiples of the cost of the cost of the associate. So why would you build your business model around churn? It's just madness. And so, no other business does that. No other business says, yes, I know that I'm going to hire X number of people and I'm going to churn them through. And every year I'm going to bring in new people to fill the gap. Everybody would say, well, what's the cost of that? That doesn't make sense. Let's invest in our people and keep them. The cost of keeping them is lower than the cost of the churn. And if I can keep happy people, then I'm going to keep happy clients. And if the clients are really happy and they see systems that are working for them and the firm is willing to fit into the way that the clients are doing business and make things easier for them, not just the result, but it's like, okay, reporting requirements or communications or whatever are just much easier, then guess what? Those clients become sticky as well. So, if you can focus on those things, and nobody does because it's just, they all assume this is the way law firms run. And how I approached the book was, if I was a Martian coming down to Earth and someone said, okay, Martian, start a law firm. And I didn't know what a law firm looked like. I didn't know how it operated. How would I do this? Starting from zero with no background knowledge, saying, okay, what would I do? And that was how I built the law firm in Avoiding Extinction.
I love that. And it just comes to my mind because as a sort of owner of a legal recruitment firm for law firms, I always say to clients, really, is this a growth or a replacement role? Because when it's a replacement role, similar to you, it's like, it breaks my heart. Because, all that time, energy and effort, you have notice periods, which are over the UK, which are longer. They're potentially 3 months. You put a search out. You could potentially be a year out of finding your cheap person. So I always, we always talk about the figures of profit per equity partner over here or, revenue per lawyer, but no one ever looks at what I call the retention per person, right? The RPP. Because if that is super low, and like you say, put us other stuff in, your machine is continuously working efficiently without holes, gaps, retraining. But again, like you say, that percentage of like focus isn't where the attention is, and I think people who pay attention to that will be a lot smarter. Talking about smarter, and I can't do a podcast episode anymore without talking about tech and AI, because we are where we are with life. What role do you see tech and IA playing specifically in the evolution of legal practice and changing ultimately the dynamics of legal services within firms?
Right. So okay, so I'm on the fence with AI because it's kind of, like we're a year and a bit in, right? Like November 2023, we're now in March. It's, maybe a year and a half in. There's some good stuff, there's some bad stuff. I think it has a lot of potential and has things that you can do now that will, shorten the timelines. What I use generative AI in particular for is if I have something particularly new and I want some help with something, right? I'll say, what would be a good response to this amendment in this transaction, or what would be, draft me a clause, and then I can play around with it and think it. But it gets me beyond zero if I don't happen to have something in it, or it'll help me in just day-to-day writing. So, for instance, I've sent emails where, one of my, learnings that I have to get better on myself is emails. Sometimes people find my emails a little abrupt. Fair comment, right? Right. I'm not trying to be abrupt. I'm just like, yeah, right. And then the person who gets it is going, oh, dude, like, what did I do to offend you? And I'm like, nothing. It was just so. From time to time, I have to stop myself. Gosh, how do I rewrite this a little bit better so it's a little bit softer and no one's gonna get it? Yeah. So it's those sorts of things. I've seen litigation people say that it's really good for helping with discovery type questions. What should I be asking for this type of file? Here's the whole bunch of facts. Help me get started on the questions list. And that sort of things, or help me synthesize this huge transcript. What are the main points that have come out of this thing? So it has some decent utility. Still a bit basic, I think in some ways. So it is. I treat it in some ways like a very junior lawyer that is like, okay, get me started, and then I can take it from there and go from there, type of approach. So will it get better? Some studies are showing that it's actually getting a little bit worse now, but I think the potential is there, but I'm not going to go crazy about it and say, oh my God, it's going to replace all lawyers. I think there's some potential to help, particularly I think in B2C kind of relationships or pro bono kind of relationships where you can put the knowledge is very much in a box, like a landlord tenant kind of issue. My landlord wants to kick me out, for this reason. Is this a valid reason? And can we somehow commercialize that to help people, for £5 get some, pretty decent landlord and tenant advice as opposed to paying loads of money?
No, I think again, it's a case of be curious with AI, use it, like you say, but also, have a base layer in terms of, like you say, I treat it at this, and this is what it's useful for. And if it gets better and it's fantastic, brilliant. If not, then it is what it is. But the main thing is you're curious and you're in. And you have to stay in with the times and ideally ahead of the times to be effective. So I want to talk about well-being within the workplace briefly, because there's been a significant increase in lawyers voicing burnout in the legal industry, particularly on platforms like LinkedIn. How do you think the industry can address the issue of burnout effectively, considering the challenges and demands faced by legal professionals?
Right. So huge question. Part of avoiding extinction was creating a firm where well-being was important to the firm as well. We care about our employees, and we really care about them. We don't just say that as a byline. We don't say our culture is what sets us apart from every other firm. Because quite frankly, if you have a partner commit suicide at your law firm, that's a reflection on your culture. Okay. And we've heard many stories recently and even before that of that unfortunate byproduct of firm culture and firms who, will loudly proclaim how well they're doing with their initiatives, but then the result is something completely different. So that comes down to employee experience, as we've already talked about. If your culture is teamwork, and I'm having a tough time, can someone else on the team do it? Is the person who's having a tough time, are they just not properly trained, right? Are they doing too much? One of the red flags that comes up in the book is, if your hours are crazy, we see that as a bad thing. We see that as a problem. Either you're taking on way too much, so we got to reallocate your workload, or there's a training issue and you're just not getting it right, or there's something else going on. But huge hours is a red flag. It's not a badge of honor. And so if firms started to look at it that way, then I think that goes a long way. I think having, some wellness programs online is nice, but I've talked to lawyers who have struggled with wellness issues at large firms, and they all said, yeah, that's great, except it only takes me this far, right? It's more than, hey, watch this video and your life is going to be good. Hey, take a yoga class, you'll be fine, right? It's deeper and more systemic in the firm than that. And, it comes down to outrageous hourly expectations, which are tied to comp, which we talked about. It comes down to a cultural thing that working hard is like an amazing thing, and being at the office every single weekend is a great thing, and giving up on your family is a great thing. That perception, and also the refusal to give help, where I'm overloaded. You see, I've got all this work together. I've begged you for assistance. I've said, hey, can you give me another clerk? Because you can see how much work I'm doing. And the answer is, well, maybe next year because it's not within budget, and so on and so forth. So it's more than just wellness initiatives. It has to be assistance, like direct assistance with people who are struggling, and being able to red flag it and creating that atmosphere where people are comfortable talking to their senior partners. Some partners are very open to this. Others are like, the people we've already mentioned. He was like, well, I'm here every weekend. I don't know why you can't take it. Can't you hack it? Maybe you shouldn't be at this firm then.
Yeah. And you can't put a Band-Aid over serious, wounds. And, that's what you're alluding to before. But the other thing, and I've just sort of thought about mentioning, which is important is, if you're not an equity partner of a law firm or an owner of a law firm, typically, if you start your legal career, you are an employee, and maybe you want to enjoy employee life. You don't necessarily want the stresses, the pressures, and working 24/7 like you see all your friends who might have gone and set up their business. They're an entrepreneur. For me, I took that option, and that's me. That's my choice. But if you like the comforts of wanting to be in a firm, and you want to ensure that you've got sensible hours and you can be there for your family and do everything, then firms need to do better to provide that, and particularly all the technology and what's out there, and educating clients and being willing to put down and put people first. Because like you said, otherwise, unfortunately, some of the harrowing stories we've seen in recent times, other than just putting a Band-Aid over, we're not going to see that transformational change, which I think But, let's stay positive. Let's hope we will get there. Let's hope people see tech for good. Let's hope people really understand the importance of putting people first is a good thing, good for clients. And hopefully we'll get to that stage where we all want to be. I want to briefly, just before we finish up, talk a little about some of your wider work you do to help the community as well, because you spent time at Gowling WLG, visiting professor in legal operations and innovation, University of Calgary. What modules did you teach there?
Yeah, the longest title in the world. Yeah, I just finished up there. I was there for, almost 10 years now. And I teach a course on innovation in legal services. And that is a survey course, because what you have to understand, as much as, Rob, you and I are in the bubble of technology, and we're on it and we're interested and it's fun and exciting. And there, we have our bubble friends who we all talk about this stuff. You have to realize that outside that bubble is a huge world of people who don't even know what you're talking about. And students are one of those, because students have watched Suits, or they have friends who are at a big law firm, and none of this stuff is discussed. And so my theory with this course was, let's get you informed. I want to get you excited as to what is going on and what the future is going to look for you at a law firm, should you choose to do that as a career path. And what are the things that you should be thinking about now as a student? What should you be learning about? What skills should you be trying to obtain, so that you will be much more useful at the law firm as they go through this very slow and arduous changing process. But do you want to be, the associate that they churn out, or do you want to be the associate that they say, hey, you seem to know about this stuff, can you help us with this? And so hopefully they'll see some value in that. Or if you want to go out on your own, because a lot of students, I find, do not want to go out there because they think it's too scary, it's too hard, it's all these sorts of things. It's like, yeah, but let's talk about what it looks like as a sole practitioner in 2024. It's not 1995, right? It's like, hey, you have, here's the practice suite of stuff. You can do an amazing amount of stuff at a very affordable price, from your living room, from your kitchen, or you can book a small, office share somewhere, and you can do a lot of the work that you couldn't have done 15 years ago. And so I'm not saying anything about, large firm experience. I mean, it's great, and there's lots of stuff you can learn from it, but being able to go out on your own is way easier than it was back in the day. Certainly when I was practicing.
And don't let fear hold you back.
It's all about options. It's all about making sure that, because in law schools, it's like, you get out of law school and you better get in a large firm. And if you don't, your life is over, right? That's all they see. That's the tunnel. And so it's broadening the horizon and just broadening their career path. Maybe you want to train, maybe you want to practice for a couple of years, and then maybe you want to go to a legal tech startup. Maybe you want to do a legal ops role at a firm. What are the different options that are available to you other than just being an associate at a Magic Circle firm?
Yeah, well said. And that's the beauty, isn't it? As time goes on, new roles, new career paths, new opportunities come apparent. So I always say, be very mindful of who you take advice from, because someone who was successful in 1995 and maybe got an exit in 2002 may have done fantastically well in that period of time. If they're not relevant and fit for purpose for 2024, then maybe there might be some nuggets of wisdom in there, but may not be the most up-to-date and relevant. So be really mindful of where you sort of, take that advice, or make sure it's fit for purpose for the environment you're currently operating in. Okay, 2 quick questions before we follow up, Mitch, because it's been an absolute masterclass start to finish, as I knew it was going to be. What top 3 skills do you think law students need to have right then looking forwards, looking at the current legal environment and what's ahead?
Curiosity. And you touched on this earlier. Be curious. Do not think that your learning ends, in law school, just learning the law, blah, blah, blah. And being able to look at what different industries are doing and say, hey, can that work in my practice, in my area? Are pieces of it work? how do I mix, dice and slice this stuff? And that's one of the things we talk about in the class is really mix, don't assume that because it's not a law firm that there's not something you can learn from that business. Be resilient. Okay. Life is hard in law, super, super hard. Be prepared for people to tell you that this is a stupid idea, whatever. Just, grind through that, become resilient, be immune to criticism. Lawyers tend to have very thin skins and they don't like to be criticized. That's a problem. Try to build up, thicken up your skin, and it will help you. And the last thing is learn, unlearn, and relearn. Right. So it's sort of always be learning. Your journey never ends, and that learning, ties in with curiosity. Expand your learning beyond just law. Be prepared to say, "Oh, wow, that wasn't a good idea anymore. We're now in 2026. Now I should relearn something new to help me get through this." And so that constant learning, unlearning, and relearning is a extremely valuable skill. Because like you said, what worked in 2002 ain't going to work in 2024. And what works now probably won't work in 2030. Who knows? But be, open to that.
And I remember when one of my mentors said to me, and I've said this before on the show, when you drop the L from learn, it spells earn. And we all need to invest the time to learn. And like you say, everything you said, it's just so true. So absolutely rewind that, listen to that again, but take heed because it's absolutely bang on the money. Okay, finally, Mitch, what advice do you have for those looking to invest in legal services for their law firm?
You mean like the law firm owners, right? So how do you, yeah. So I think you want to invest in a good ops person, right? Someone who can really understand and go through the processes in your firm. So we're really lucky at GTA. So we have some just banger legal ops people who are amazing every time I speak to them about how they understand things and look at things in a completely different way from a lawyer would look at it. And so investing in someone who can go through your processes and workflows and your KM system, because KM systems traditionally are pretty much just landfill sites as opposed to really well organized, searchable databases, right? So that would be my number one advice is just find someone who's really, really good at that operations level and let them guide you and trust them and trust them. Say, don't say, I'm the lawyer, that's stupid. I'm the lawyer, this is the way I do things. Give them some runway, give them some trust, and let them help you.
Don't hire great people and tell them what to do, right? Hire great people and let them tell you what to do. Mitch, I've absolutely loved this. And if our listeners, which I'm sure they will want to know more, how can they find out more about your career journey, your books, or your services? Where's the best place for them to go and learn more? Feel free to shout on any websites or any social media handles. We'll also share them with this episode for you too.
Great. So, my website is probably easiest. It's Kowalski.ca. Kowalski, Kowalski.ca. That has my email on it, has my Twitter handles and stuff at ME Kowalski. So super easy to find me, and I'm always happy to chat and respond to emails on people who just, starting the journey and just want to chit chat for a bit.
Awesome. Well, I would definitely take Mitch's offer on that. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much once again, Mitch. Wishing you lots of continued success. But from now, from all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast, over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.